This is Chad McDonough with Execs in the Know, and I know we have a bunch of people that are joining us for today's call. I hope, first of all, everyone's doing well, and whatever your plans are for the upcoming holiday season, wishing you and your family all the best, and of course, safe and happy holidays. Andy, I'm going to introduce you here shortly, but Andy Bird from Concentrix, it's a real pleasure to have you here today. Thank you. And what I want to do, when I think of the title, behind accelerate or aligning leadership behind accelerated and responsible Gen I really want to highlight the keyword responsible. And Andy, I'll probably ask you a little bit of a question here as we kick off, because that's near and dear to my thought process of today's discussion. But I have a couple slides I want to go through quickly. First of all, thank you for your listenership. Thank you for your time. I know how busy everybody is, but really as a community, we do come together to learn and listen and gather. So perfect for execs in the know. There's a number of key takeaways that we're going to have in today's discussion. Andy, I'm thrilled to have some of the discussion points that we're going to be going through today, and I'll make sure that we get through these. And of course, audience, we would love to get your questions throughout the conversation. There is a Q&A box that I'd like you to use. So anything that we say as we're listening and learning together, please put your comments or questions in there, and I'll make sure I do my best to get to them. If this is your first time to Execs in the Know, thank you. For the last 15 years, it's been a corporate CX community by design. I call leaders learning from leaders. We gather on all different types of topics, everything around the customer success and ecosystem. And a lot we do in content research, topic discussions like today. Many ways for you to get involved. Just go to our execsintheknow.com website and you'll find all the information and resources available for you. One thing I do want to call out, we have a great corporate advisory board really guiding the conversations such as today and helping us at the most latest trends and needs as a CX industry and as a community. So thank you to all of our board members for your continued assistance with us. For our corporate listeners, I would encourage you to join our Kia. This is our online community. I look at it as kind of like a steroid, LinkedIn on steroids for the CX leader. There are so many hundreds of people on this platform that are asking great questions and insights, and again, just sharing in a very unfiltered way. If you have any questions about it, just reach out to me, Chad at execsintheknow.com, and I'll be happy to get some more information for you. I'm super excited, and last slide here, Andy, but super excited for our next national summit it's the Customer Response Summit. It's going to be in Tucson, Arizona, this coming March 12th through the 15th. Do make a note. A lot of you do come to our summits. It's always great to see you in person for the 3-day gathering, and I hope you'll make plans to join us in March of next year. All right. Well, Andy, first of all, for all of our guests that may not be familiar with you personally, Andy Bird is the Vice President of Product. Andy, I think you reside in the Dallas, Texas area. So for all our Texan fans, welcome. But before I get into a quick question, why don't we tell us a little bit about the role, the group you support at Concentrix, and just anything else you want to set the stage for us today about you and the organization.
No, I appreciate it very much, Chad. I'm very excited to be here. So Concentrix, as most people know, is a large business process outsourcer, right? We like to refer to that as a BPO, which essentially means we help our customers create value in their CX journeys. And we do it in all kinds of aspects. The aspect that I get most particularly interested in and that I'm responsible for is within our Catalyst division. So think of Catalyst as the technology division. So we have a custom solution part of our group, and then we have a productized version of our group, and I run the products there. So we've got engineers all over the world, and we've got a full product management team, as well as a PMP group that makes sure that we're constantly innovating and supplying our customers, not just with the people that they need to create that value, but also the technology as well.
And so the area, I know Concentrix is a very large organization with many pieces, but it's the Catalyst group, and that's more of the technology side of it. And I don't know, as we get into the conversation, if there's different examples you could pull out or bring, please do so. For our listeners, I was thinking, and Andy, I'll ask you this, and if you agree, disagree, or have different viewpoint, listeners, please put them in the Q&A box. But we wanted to have this topic discussion because I thought it was important about aligning leadership behind accelerated, and I use the word responsible generative AI. And I guess my question before we start, Andy, is do you see responsible generative AI as the same as ethical AI?
Um, I don't. I see those as two very distinct things. And the way that I typically would like to define this is responsible AI as a whole, generative or not, is really when
Mhm.
you are responsible for your customers' data. We just recently, and I didn't mention this before, we just recently merged with Webhelp. And that has made us a bigger, broader organization. And in that, we're now responsible for more customers' data on a regular basis. And so it's protecting PI information, PCI information, HIPAA information on a regular basis. That's responsible. I'm utilizing AI, but I'm keeping in tune with
Mm.
governance over particular aspects of pieces of data.
Okay.
Ethical AI is different. Ethical is, and I always like to define it as really being about the truth. It's making sure that, for example, if I go to generative AI and I ask a question that is anomalous in some way, shape, or form, that I'm coming back with factual information on a regular basis, and so that I'm speaking actuality and I'm maintaining standards in the way that I deliver information, not just the way, but the content of that information back to the consumer. And so that's why I see them as both. And so I think it's really important to be good at being responsible as well as being ethical for our customers, because that's typically what they're after as well. They want that responsibility and they want to know that you're doing business practice and utilizing AI ethically.
Really like that distinction and that separation. Again, none of these are one and done. These are continuations and something that we'll continue to, I guess, monitor and be very much aware of as an industry, as a community. But good clarification. Thank you. If you want to go ahead and take control of the deck there, Andy, I'll let you start driving. I want to lean into some of the slides that we've prepared today and some of the case study that we're going to get into. So how would you like to start us off here?
Well, I'd like to start with one of the biggest misnomers in the industry, and that is, where does generative AI fit when it comes to conversational AI, machine learning, RPA? Because a lot of times these terms get used synonymously, and there is distinction between them, right? So when you're talking about machine learning and understanding something, running that through if then do this statement, that is not necessarily AI, so to speak, although generative AI is ramping
Mhm.
up towards that. That today is fairly distinct. And so you might still be using machine learning with generative AI. You might still be learning robotic process automation or RPA with generative AI. They can be used hand in hand. Now, do we see the future where a lot of those things start to converge? Absolutely. But in the meantime, the distinction is so important, partly because of cost and partly because of where you want to apply it. And I'll give you an example. Conversational AI has always been good using natural language, so it's commonly referred to as NLP, using natural language processing in order to capture specific understanding, sometimes sentiment, but specific understanding or specific keywords when you're using a virtual assistant. And so you call into a place, and that's why you hear people. So I know Thanksgiving's coming up. That's why I know my dad, when he's calling some of his businesses that he used, I can hear him in the other room going, yelling at the phone, customer service, customer service, customer service, multiple times. It's because he knows that that system is looking for that key word. And if he says it with enough gumption, that it will likely get him to an agent, which is really what he wants, because he wanted that empathy. Generative AI really sets itself apart because it can take and it can contextualize the data, summarize the data, and then estimate intent very, very quickly and very well for that matter. So I can say, I want to know how long you're going to service my car rather than saying warranty, warranty, warranty over and over and over again, which is what the old way of doing it. However, that is the great part about generative AI. The difference, though, in what people don't talk about is the cost. When I'm using generative AI to do that, and I want to say, how do I service my car rather than warranty, or how long is the service contract on my car, or something to that effect, um, that is going to use tokens. Those tokens are going to be used by one of the primary LLM providers, or maybe you built your own. And that's going to have a one type of a cost versus conversational AI, which is a fixed cost per keyword given. And so you always want to balance that out and go, if I'm just asking about hours of operation, maybe I'll just use conversational AI. But most people don't have a choice. They either have to go all in or one or the other. We've developed a platform that we allow you to pick and choose. Sometimes I want to use conversational AI, and sometimes I want to use generative AI, because at the end of the day, the best part about generative AI that I'm finding is resonating with customers so much. And we have this in production, like we have customers actually using this, is it gets intent. And that is key
Hmm.
in so many aspects. It was an interesting chat. I recently was talking to a bank, and I always thought, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I don't want to date myself. I just let the gray hairs do it. But I always thought, you want to authenticate, but you don't. Because I was listening to just a couple of interactions that not only the agents were taking, but looking at their flows. You don't need to authenticate to know the hours of business. You don't need to authenticate to know the best rates that you have on a certificate of deposit for the next 12 months, right? Those are common information that I can readily get that I may not need an advisor for. And what that allows us to do is fill in the gaps for customer experience. It's not just about containment. It's about adding. I have this philosophy. The world needs more CX. It just does. Like, there's no one that you can call that gets 100%. Even the best businesses that I call today, I'm still left with some notion of, they should have known this, or it should have been easier to do
Well, Andy, there's a lot to unpack of everything you just said. And first of all, it's been audience and community members, execs, and I know it's been a very long year. I don't know how many conversations AI alone this particular year, and continuing to sort of sort, look, consider, think through. Um, you emphasized intent in where you guys are at. Enable. I like the scalable a la carte. Some of the things you're approaching in how you're doing it. So when we get into the case studies, maybe give some examples. I find that intriguing, Andy. I just want to make sure, Andy, you've got the slide controls. I'm going to come off camera, let you go through a few of these slides here, and then audience, please continue to ask your questions as we're going through today's preparation. We learn together as a community.
Love it. Thanks, Chad, very much. So as we go through and we look at where this can be applied, and really where the problems and the outcomes that we expect, I always like to look at it along the view of the customer experience journey. And the customer experience journey, in the way that I've seen it best defined by our customers, has been acquisition to feedback. And here's what I mean. So at the beginning of the journey, you have the ability to get the customer. So you want to get that customer interacting with you for whatever reason. Maybe they have a problem that they have to solve. Maybe you're trying to entice them to do something different, buy something, etc. So you have that acquisition, and then you have that acquisition. Then you have that beginning of the journey. Once they get to the point where they want to do the beginning of the journey, what does that beginning interaction look like? A lot of times that's a virtual assistant. Sometimes it's a chatbot. It could be SMS. It could be, utilizing WhatsApp. It might even be social media. And that's that beginning of the journey. And then you have the mid journey. So I'm now interacting with the business. I'm a consumer and I'm interacting with the business, a customer, a healthcare, whatever. I might be a patient. It could be a number of things. But now I'm interacting with the company in question. And that's that middle of the journey. So I could be talking to an agent. I could still be working with an automated system. I have the after journey, which is now I need to get the post results of that interaction, meaning I need to reflect on how good that interaction was. Was I able to do resolution? Was I able to reduce the handle time? Whatever it might be there. And then there's this follow-up. And that's where I get the feedback, where I'm sending out a survey, doing customer feedback management. So as you look along that journey, you see different points here in these circles where we have been able to deploy generative AI in each one of these areas that allows for uh, that utility, that intent to be known, but to really optimize it. And then, by the way, you want to spend a lot of time optimizing and increasing the viability of any one of those areas. So I'll give you an example. And from a virtual assistant standpoint, when you are first, let's say you've been acquired and you're calling in, you want at that point in time be able to use normal language, be able to speak to it. And you don't want to hear the robotic voice back, which, by the way, if you've heard some of the new generative AI voices, they are pretty phenomenal. And you want it to be able to speak back to you as if you were talking to a person. You want it to almost emulate empathy to some degree or another, but you want to be able to use normal speak. Say things like, instead of yes, I confirm, it's sure, or something to that regard. And then once I get to then let's say I need to get to the agent. Once I get to the agent, I want the agent to have a summarization of what my interaction was up at the front end, and then have the capability of being able to have context or summarization, or context and summarization of not only the interaction, but then also what to say. So you're kind of guiding the agent along in the talk track. And then post call, you want to be able to utilize generative AI to ask the question rather than go through a bunch of historical and real time reports. You want to be able to just ask the question: what were my abandoned calls for the month of May? Show me in a blue graph and have that be displayed out. And then you want that customer feedback management to be able to send out a survey at the end. So that's really what that looks like across the board from beginning to end on the customer journey. And so we built a platform that not only allows us to utilize generative AI throughout that journey, but I think there's another key thing, and that is, and we'll talk a little bit about this more, that is the democratization of that. So, I've gone through these scenarios already from the business insights. The challenge, though, is when you're doing generative AI is not getting locked into a provider, not getting locked into a certain type of technology, especially if you have different nuances throughout the business. So we talk to a lot of businesses where they're using two hyperscalers at the same time. They're using AWS and they're using GCP, for example. And if that's the case, you want to be able to burn your commits on each one of those at your will. The other big one is LLMs. If you look at Anthropic, if you look at OpenAI's ChatGPT, especially 4.0, if you look at Vertex with utilizing Palm, going down all those LLMs, each one of them have different nuances and different advantages that you might want to deploy in one area versus another. And so in doing so, one of the things that's important there is being able to pivot and move. Because if you start small here and you utilize one area and grow from that rather than creating a big picture, and this is a philosophy that we're finding resonates a lot with customers, rather than saying I will do all of these things at the same time, I can do certain pivotal points where I can implement generative AI, optimize that generative AI, and then land and expand from there. And that's really where we're finding a lot of success with customers in that regard. So I've talked a lot there, but remember, look at those different areas where you have problems or you expect certain outcomes, and look at how you can simply implement generative AI in such a way that you're not locked in, that you can optimize the customer experience, and then you can go ahead and grow from there and find other areas where you might get more efficiency, you might get more understanding across the board. Now, how do you set the course for that? Kind of given, that prelim there, but how do I really start that process from a customer journey standpoint to look at to see if there's different outcomes or different problems that they could solve in each one of these areas? And where do you want to gain optimization? Where do you want to gain efficiency? And where do you want to return? That
Okay.
is key for there. And this really exemplifies the last slide. These are some core areas that we're finding that are very simply and easily implemented. And some of the results that you can expect is when I do this for an agent assist or advisor
Mhm.
assisted role, what can I expect out of that? Well, I can expect definitely higher compliance. I can expect more efficiency across the board. And then this one is really, really interesting, is on the reporting side of the house. If I'm employing generative AI, which, Chad, now you and I were talking about earlier, which I thought was really, really interesting. From a reporting perspective, I don't have to violate any rules. And so going back to your responsibility um, statement earlier, a lot of people don't put information into generative AI because it could then be deemed as public. And so storing that information is there. But you can do responsible AI here without doing that whatsoever. And it's the way you implement it. And I'll give you the example. I use generative AI to help write the SQL statement. And in that case, I'm not giving generative AI any information whatsoever. I'm just utilizing it to translate some human language, or my abandoned calls for the month of May, into a SQL statement that it could then display for me. And that is really the beauty of that type of an example.
Got
And
it.
now we're on
And
to
as we
the
look, yeah, if we go to the next slide here, setting a course for AI. I'll go next. And some of the top concerns, I guess.
yeah, it's the roadmap one first, and then the last one, doing generative AI at scale.
Okay.
We're so often we're seeing time and time again where everybody's got this generative AI roadmap, and it's massive, and it's the utopia of where they want to be, and I think it's good to have that insight. However, if you start small and you iterate and you can do it quickly, you can start small and quick. It's much, much better to do that and get the momentum, because generative AI is going to change significantly. So I talked to a customer just recently, and I watched their slideshow, and they showed it, and they have this 12 to 18-month roadmap. And the utopia that they're going to get to sounds phenomenal. But
Mm.
how and what they need to do to get there is so complex and so big that I would argue two things, and this was our talk track, is that a generative AI is going to change significantly by the time you get there, because generative AI is moving fast, really, really fast. So things might have changed by the time you get to that 12-month time frame, if you make it to the minimum and not the maximum of that. And number two, your requirements are probably going to change. And so you're almost implementing a waterfall-like methodology when you do that, rather than doing an agile, iterative methodology and saying, you know what, where's my biggest pain point today? And maybe your biggest pain point is web chat. Maybe your web chat today confines you to, you go onto your website, and, I don't mind who you are, but I would say that there is a good high percentage of web chat available today. And this is what happens when I click web chat. Click web chat and it gives me three options. If I don't see my option of what I'm thinking about in that web chat, what am I going to do? I'm going to pick up the phone.
I First of all, I know we're on this one slide here about top concerns, and I would agree with every single bullet point that you have here over to the right. I've been hearing that collectively. I think 2024 is going to be from a lot of information gathering or noise to actual implementation to continue to roadmap and journey map through some of these things here. The year of action, as I'm calling it. There was a real quick, before we get into more of the slides here, Sam from our audience wanted to ask, and I want to throw this out there just real quick. He was interested to hear from you, Andy, about what you think, I guess, and how we actually help customers from representative or jamming the zero button into actually engaging with the generative AI feature. Maybe a little clarification around that, but at a top, does that resonate, or how you'd answer that?
Yeah. So I was trying to see if I could find the actual question.
It's
Interesting to
if you go
hear.
to the Q&A, there's a little question mark on the left-hand side there. You can
Yeah, yeah,
see
no,
that.
I got it. Jamming is into actually engaging. So there's two ways that we're finding we're getting better percentage of engagement. And the
Mm,
first of which is the voice that you're using. If the voice is robotic, it's human nature immediately to want to talk to a representative. And by the way, there's two reasons why you'd want to talk to a representative at that point in time. One, you think that that the automated system can't solve your problem, but two, you may want empathy. And empathy is something that generative AI can only emulate. It doesn't have true feelings about. So if you're a healthcare provider, for example, you may want empathy. So what happens is typically me as a consumer, I'll pick up the phone, I hear that robotic voice, and I immediately assume it cannot solve my problem. So you got to change that voice. That's the first thing you got to do. And that's where, if you haven't listened to them, several of the generative AI companies out there today have new voices. One of them is called Juniper. It's fantastic. There's phenomenal ones out there. And so if you have the ability to deploy, and that's that democratization, be able to pivot quickly, that's why I keep saying, go small and move as fast, move at the speed of generative AI rather than waiting for generative AI, because the ones that we've implemented, like on the virtual assistant, I'm now doing that new voice. So that's a brand new thing. They get that implemented. It's right away. It's fantastic. But if that voice is changed so that it sounds more humanistic, then I have a higher likelihood of interacting with it. And two, solve their problem. If you solve their problem once with it, then they're likely to come back and let you solve their problem the second time. So those are the two aspects that really come into play when you're engaging with a virtual assistant like that.
Well, thank you, Andy, and Sam, thank you for the question. Audience, our time is limited. So again, as we're going through our discussion, please put your questions in there and I'll do my best to get them answered. I want to move on to the next slide and let's lean into some of the case study we're getting ready to get into and let you take it from here. And just tell me next when you're ready for the slides.
Yeah, and again, my apologies on that. So we'll keep moving. The everything that you see from a generative AI standpoint, and even the consumer chat GPT or openai.com that you can go to, or freedom GPT, or some of the other ones that are out there, you're really just seeing the tip of the iceberg. And from a consumer perspective, it's easy because you're really not doing data that you need to be responsible about, and really the ethics of that data. There are some sites that actually do comparison between the different models of seeing which one's more ethical than the others. But when it comes to that responsibility, there's not much there. I'm not giving private information. I'm not giving my credit card information, my social security, how many people do I have in my household. I'm typically not doing that. But when I'm interacting with the business, I am. And so there's this work that is done underneath the iceberg, right? So everything that you see from a ChatGPT standpoint or a generative AI standpoint is all up at the top. And the work that needs to be done at the bottom is much more, it's more involved and it's more complex. This can be simplified, again, based upon a platform. If this work has been done and you're on a platform, so we have a generative AI interaction platform today. And so all this stuff underneath the iceberg has already been accomplished. And so all we're doing at that point in time is customizing and nuancing it for your particular needs. And that is we're finding a higher success rate and a higher adoption rate and a faster deployment rate, which is the biggest one, in doing it this way, of having a platform rather than a custom build every single time. Now, there are still times that you're going to want to do that, but for the most part, having all this stuff pre-built and ready to go, and just being able to tweak one thing or another, or maybe it's a dozen things, it really depends. But that whole idea is huge, and that's really when you're looking at, what do I want to do from a generative AI strategy? Again, I'm going to reiterate what I already said, and that is make it simplistic, make it small, solve one problem, and then get it in quickly, and then iterate. Don't forget to iterate, because you're going to want to go, okay, we're getting 4% there, or 10%, or 30% in containment, optimization, increased efficiency. Where else? What's my next problem? What's problem number 2? And then go there. And all the while you're optimizing on each one of them. And we'd love to say that I'm going to say it's always good to have a strong partner to be alongside you to do this stuff underneath the iceberg, or the tip of the iceberg. And so that's important. So what are some of the things that you want to think about as you go through this process in that optimization? Go ahead and hit the next one, Chad. There we go. Is making sure that you understand all the risks. So the interesting thing is, even as we deploy generative AI, is not only did we have IT talking to us about how we're doing it and how we're hosting it, but legal was involved, right? Because there are different scenarios where legal needs to make sure that we are doing a good, responsible job with generative AI. So you got to be prepared for making sure that all the stakeholders understand what you're doing, where you're going, what you're trying to accomplish, and how you're using it. And that how becomes really, really important because go back to my reporting example earlier. If I'm just writing a SQL statement and I could show that to legal, man, that just checks the box for them really, really quickly because I'm not exposing any customer data. I'm not doing anything that would allow a bad actor to do something bad with that, right? It's all within the confines of the standard customer CX journey. And so with that, just making sure that they understand that how becomes really, really huge. Where I'm storing it, where I'm hosting it, et cetera. Those things are big and those should be exposed. But if as long as they know how you're using it, and if you're using it in ways that do not lack or do not expose things that we shouldn't, that's huge. The other thing is doing QA on it. So looking at the efficiency and constantly looking back to say, what can I do to tweak? So I'll give you an example of that. When you're doing generative AI, there's this thing called prompt engineering. And that is, so if you go on OpenAI today and you say, I'd like you to write me a paper on why chemicals being dumped into rivers is harmful for the people who live nearby its health, it will do so. But it's not going to do so confined to a specific region or area unless you tell it to. So if you tell it to write that paper for North America versus, say, Australia, there might be some nuances there that need to be put in play. And maybe this is not the best example in the world, but I still kind of like it, so I'm going to continue to run with it. The nuances matter. So when you're doing prompt engineering, being specific about who you are, where you are, what you're trying to accomplish is important because it will provide better results. We like to call that in a loose sort of way, prompt engineering. And so if you have good prompt engineers in that regard, or the ability to assist you in that prompt engineering, it's going to go a long way in making sure you get better results. And then to my previous point about QAing it is going back and saying, yeah, we set up that prompt engineer to say that it was the who, the what, and the why, right? And we set that up that way. But if we change this one thing, we're going to start getting these results and it's going to increase our efficiency. That's part of the QA process that needs to happen. The other thing is using generative AI to QA the existing conversations that are already going on, which is something else that we've started doing to make sure that we're picking out components and pieces. So how many conversations were about troubleshooting versus how many conversations were about warranty versus how many conversations were about the weather, right? Type of a thing. You can pull that information out. You'll find that in QAing as well. So that is huge. And then the accuracy thing on this is really goes to that ethical comment that we talked about before. It's just making sure that you're giving them the truth. I always have this joke with our platform when people are going through it, and we have this kind of fake way of trying to trick the generative AI and say, how do I ride a horse? So I'm from Dallas, Texas. How do I ride a horse? Well, I've got it built into our platform. Since it's not gathering public data, it's not going to tell you, you put your foot in the stirrup, your left foot in the stirrup, and your right foot swing it over, whatever, however that all works. I'm not good at riding horses, by the way. But if you were to do that, that's what it would do if it was gathering public information. Because I've limited the large language model and confined it to the website for that customer only and used a bots on docs approach so that it's only grabbing the documentation from that particular customer that they want to be visible. And that could include FAQs, by the way. Because it's doing that, that allows it to not have an answer for that question, which would then go to customer service. And so my big joke on that is when it goes to customer service, it says, we're sending you to a customer service representative, hopefully in Texas, to help you ride a horse. So hopefully people are smiling with that one little joke throughout the day. Moving on to the next one, Chad. So let's talk about, you just popped on. That means you have a question or a comment.
Yeah, I do. And audience, and I want to hear from you, Andy, for sure, in this particular slide. My question to the audience is, as you look at these different buckets and you're thinking about potentially generative AI in one part or piece of your organization, is there one area that you're looking at specifically? If you just want to put knowledge management or whatever it is, put it in the Q&A box. I'd love to hear just where maybe it's a combination of these things. But Andy, lots of possibilities here, right? Lots of possibilities.
Absolutely.
So where how do you want to walk us through this data chart here, this particular piece, and some idea sharing and some use case? And again, audience, I'd love to hear your thoughts here about what Andy's going to say or even where you're thinking.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear what everybody has to say, because it kind of goes to our ongoing polling as we talk to customers. But looking at these 8 items, just off the top of your head, going, where are my biggest problems? Where are my biggest challenges? Or what outcomes do I want to change the most? And I'll tell you, simple ones like email are ones that really alleviate a lot of pain. And here's what I mean by that. If you're taking email right now from your customers, and that email is coming in, and then you need to provide a response because you want to show them, A, that you're active, B, that you care, right? And C, you're trying to resolve their problem. That is a really, really interesting area, easy area, low cost area, and really doesn't encroach upon anything that would typically be problematic. I'm sure you can dig up and find some, but that's a great one to just kind of start off with. I find chat is really much the same. And so those areas are much more simplified than many of the others, where you get into more complexity, where you're building, your own knowledge management platform or knowledge management service for your customers. Advisor Assist is really, really good in that regard. We've talked a lot about self-service bots. The other one that we have not even talked about whatsoever is on training. When I want to walk somebody through a scenario that they would be able to be interacting with on a regular basis with a customer, I want to enable that agent with all the puts and takes around that, right? All the things that could go awry. Generative AI is able to simulate that very, very well, so that I can set up scenarios to train people quicker, to give them kind of a better idea of what they might be or what they should be expecting as they do those interactions. Chad, did you have one? Because you just popped on.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the popping in and out. Maybe it's
It's all
been more
good.
distracting. Um, and I want you to speak to this one. And Mark, I won't say the company you're with, of course, but it's a streaming platform for media, well known. They're looking at building a co-pilot option for the contact center advisors that limits the LLM to their internal knowledge base and external customer-facing FAQs. And again, you can see if you want to look more specifics there in the Q&A thing there. What's your comment on that? I have some opinions with it, and I don't think it's an anomaly. But what is your opinion to that, Andy? What Mark is doing?
Yeah. So one of the things that's interesting about generative AI is it's a layer. So one of the things that we've implemented is generative AI and generative AI. So from a prompt engineering standpoint, there is complexity in prompt engineering. You can actually use generative AI to create the prompt for generative AI to use. And you could use 2 different ones, which I find is even more interesting if you have a versatile platform like that. And we've got one, but that's neither here nor there. So it's a layer. So when you talk about AIs working together, you're layering them on top. It's how do I provide the AI below me or to the side of me, whichever way you want to infer the stack. How do I give that the appropriate information? And again, at some point in time, you still need the appropriate engineering is probably a strong word with generative AI these days, because you don't need a full-blown engineer that knows code to do that. But how do I take that common speak and translate that over? And that's how they're going to be working together, is one's going to be informing the other. And then again, going back to the outcome, what is the outcome that I expect out of that secondary or tertiary AI that I'm touching at that point in time. And that's really where you need to know. As long as you know that, then you can go back through the entire stack. And again, that stack could be vertical or horizontal. And without getting into the nuances of why you do versus one versus another, that's huge. So, oh wait, I just heard the word, or I just saw the word. Yes. Okay. So let's go through these questions because I think they're good, Chad. I'm going to go. Roku is looking
And
to build.
I always appreciate our audience. They do a great job of sharing with us together. Which one do you want to take on next? Let's get these questions in.
Let's do our contact center advisors that limits the LLM to our internal knowledge. Yes. So if you're building a copilot at that point in time, you want to do like I said, a limited large language model, and you can do that. You can set it up if you've got the right deployment partner. You can set that up to only gather data from your website, your FAQs, and specific docs that you have, rather than, and so it's really utilizing the generative AI framework. Rather than grabbing public data, it's only grabbing that internal data. It's almost like building your own LLM in a lot of ways, although there's some puts and takes again there, where sometimes it's beneficial to build your own, just really, really expensive. So it's a great starting point. And back to my previous point, and really our next slide, which is how to build this, that roadmap perspective: start small, start easy, and then move on from there. But let's go to number 4. I have a whole innovation roadmap slide on pre-generated and IVRs. That's what caught my attention, was that word. So it's the point that we made a strategic decision not to implement them, given our LD. Yep. I think the next area of its interest are advisor assistant, knowledge management, quality. Perfect. Like that is the map out right there. And Sam, as you've set that.
Let's summarize. I know it's kind of long-winded in a good way, but I'm just saying if we could summarize to the audience what Sam was throwing out there.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought everybody was reading it too. So let me just summarize. So Sam's got a situation where he's got a different generation that is interacting with bots and IVR, so chatbots and IVR. And the generation he's talking about tends to have less patience for robotic things that don't work, right? And so what he's done is he has set up his roadmap to say, wait a minute, if those things are not going to work for our demographic, the people that we're trying to serve, the roadmap should actually be, let's focus on the agent assist, the knowledge management. Then let's work on the QA, the training, the coaching. He's got the Gen AI process automation after that, and then go into the bots, and even email response then. And that is perfect. He has set up his roadmap to his customer, to their, to the actual demographic. I actually talked to a customer very much like this, Sam, literally this week, and their demographic was 55 plus, and he said the same thing. However, I encourage you, one thing that might change, and I think your priority order is perfect here with advisor assist, training and coaching, process automation, and then self-service bots, is the new voices. The new voices might change the game for you. And that's what I meant by moving at the speed of generative AI. So if you're going to do advisor assist, my advice in this regard would be make sure you're set up on a platform that you can do both. Set up one, see how it goes, make sure your agents are able to take that, the generative AI is able to contextualize the information, summarize it for the agent, repeat it back to the caller in this case, or the person that they're chatting with. And then if you're finding efficiency there, if that platform has the capability to then do virtual assistant, start with the voices and start small. Do 1%, 5% of all voice traffic that's coming in, and see what your response rate is. So that is huge. What a great question.
Let's real quick, Thomas, because I know our time's going fast here, and thank you again, everyone, for questions. That's really the intent. But Thomas was asking, how do you foresee the different AIs working together? Great question. But there are now AIs built into every product, such as Salesforce. Then there are enterprise-wide AI. Some of this you talked about, I think, in the beginning of the talk track here, in public AIs. But how to coordinate and manage them? Want to reiterate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. My big And this is in part just kind of the way that the philosophy of our company and the way we've worked is just make sure you have flexibility. I like Salesforce's Einstein. I think it's fantastic. There's some great places where you want to utilize that, especially from a CRM perspective and the way that the agent utilizes that. That is great. But what am I doing post call? Einstein may not be the best thing to use post call in that regard. So having the flexibility to be able to pick and choose, I think, is paramount, because and you do want them talking to each other, influencing one another, and sending information to one another. And so it's just not getting yourselves locked in. A lot of I'm trying, let me say this in the best way I know how, without indicting any single company. A lot of the providers that do generative AI, in particular with LLMs, want to lock you in on pre-bought big amounts of tokens. And I think that's fine, but if you're really going to go down that, so if you're, again, I don't like to call out specific vendors, but let's say you're a specific, the one of the hyperscalers is one of your go-to partners always, and they have generative AI capability, and you're already doing a burn down commit with them, that's probably fine to buy some tokens with them. Be be very pragmatic about how many and how much you buy at any given time, and make sure that you have the scale of the usage, because an interaction can take 2,000, 3,000 tokens in an interaction, depending on how often it's going to hit that generative AI tool. So do that. If you have the capability of being flexible, force the flexibility on the vendor. That is the one thing that we've allowed our customers to do with us is we don't, we will work with everybody. And so because of that, that allows us to pick and choose both the LLM and the cloud provider or hyperscaler in this regard, to whoever you want. And then see what they're going to do to come alongside you. And that's that underneath the iceberg thing I talked about earlier, is there's a lot of work that needs to be done. If they don't have a platform that they can do that on, how are they going to do that custom for you? And then what's the sustainability of that? Meaning, what's my long term? And this is a question I always ask. And we have a custom shop, so this is no, this is it's totally fine to go that route. Just know what your sustainability plan, and how am I going to be able to optimize this going forward? And that those questions I think are worthwhile to ask, every single time you go through that. I love the statement here. A qualified partner can lead you through each step, removing chaos and confusion. And it's true, because you got the design, you're doing the roadmap aspect of this, you're building it, and you're running it. My whole inclination and the whole thing that I help our company do is on the build and the run, because we believe that we've got the design there. It's a product, it's a platform. So I have other folks that help me if I need the design, but I make sure that that platform's easy so that the build isn't hard, and then running it, understanding that sustainability. What is that going to look like 2-3 years down the road? And can I allow my customers to adapt and adopt the new technologies as they come out quickly, easily, and again, creating the efficiency? Everybody's about savings. We know that. But I would argue that savings also comes from increasing CX as a whole. Sorry, Chad.
Let's do this, Andy. We have less than 10 minutes. Let's finish up on a couple of our slides. Let's get back to some audience stuff and some other questions. But this has been really good stuff. And I'll go back to the previous slide about specific use case for Gen AI. Was there anything you wanted to summarize quickly on this slide? And then we'll move to the next.
No, I think we've covered these, and again, I don't want to cover anything ad nauseum, but I do want to repeat a couple of key things. Find the area. If it's simple, straightforward, do that small implementation. I love what Sam said. Doing advisor assist with a knowledge management system or a knowledge bot in there, that's a great place to start. And you don't even have to start with all the agents. That's what's even better is you can start with a handful. And if you just get that going, I've found demonstrating to executive leadership, and other stakeholders, is really, when I get momentum, that helps a great deal in that conversation. If I don't have momentum, then it's just theorizing and philosophizing, right? This is the potential, this is the possible. But if I get that small iterative step, then I have some numbers to go off of, and that goes a long way.
Very good. Hey, Deanna, Bob, Jason, I dropped you a quick comment in the chat there. If you could look at that and let me know some of our brand users today. But I like this slide here. I'll probably take a screenshot or save that for different reasons. And thank you for that. In this building a roadmap, I know we talked a little bit about, and I had it up on the screen there, but again, from a quick summary, what's the key elements that you want to just kind of call out?
No, just you got to go through the whole process: the design, the build, the run. And design comes with the knowing the outcome that you want ahead of time, and then that's really building towards that. And I love the whole idea of making sustainable solutions that are ongoing that you can continue to iterate on. So that's really run for me.
Hmm. As we look at the key takeaways, and I really want to kind of punch this one home for everyone, I'm going to continue to ask the audience if you want to throw a couple of comments in the chat section or the Q&A box. You know, kind of what's keeping us up at night in regards to this entire conversation. There's no right or wrong, but this, when you think through the conversation we've had, what's kind of keeping you up or predictions for 2024? So help me out, and I'd love to get your thoughts. So as we look at these key takeaways, what are, and we go one by one, but I mean, some it's self-explanatory, but how do you want to emphasize on this?
Yeah, the proof of concept one here is a phenomenal one, and it's goes back to the previous talk track that we've already had. If you can find ourselves, we volunteer ourselves in this, but a partner that will do a POC with you and do a POC with you based around a minimal investment is massive. Going back to those numbers will matter, those efficiency gains, whatever your outcome is that you're trying to accomplish. Setting up a POC, finding is a great way of navigating through. Every organization's got their things, and so if you've got things you have to navigate with your stakeholders, it helps a great deal with that, but also helps a great deal with your customers. Customers are finding that, or we're finding that, as we're a B2B2C, when you're taking care of your customers and you're doing new things, it's kind of like, I don't know, Chad, it's kind of like this. When you get an update on your iPhone or your Android device, there's a little bit of pain because you got to shut the thing down for a little bit. But then when it comes up and you get some new buttons and new features, and they've been less and less fancy with the UI these days, but there are some new cool things that are in there, and you get that, and your customers are experiencing that. When you have a new chat button on your website, I'm telling you, it changes things. That new chat button that before said "Ask me anything," and you clicked on it, and the only thing that you got from that chat button was a phone number to call in. There's no reason to have the chat button there. You totally, it's totally remiss of the entire process to have a chat button there if it's going to force you to call in anyway, because I'm not able to provide any value. But if I have a chat button there and I can interact with it, and it's open to my question, not forcing me to what it wants to tell me. Wow. The responsiveness from the customers are they're playing with this technology at home too. So if they're playing with this technology on your website or on your IVR or through the agents that you're interacting with, they're going to feel it, they're going to experience it. And I think it takes you up a notch. I really do.
Well, let's get to some questions and comments and sort of a summary wrap up here. First of all, I thank you, everyone. The great thing about Execs in the Know and our community holistically is you don't have to go at this alone. I really think that 2024 will be a transformative year from concept to talking to some action. Andy, we're going to need a lot of assistance from some of our strategic partners like Concentrix throughout the next couple of years with case study, insights, best practice. I would just encourage the entire community to stay close with us and as we go through here. One comment that came in, I hear, is from one of our audience members, is the biggest challenge has been the inability to gain alignment from product and legal regarding generative AI pilot. And that is something I've heard common. And I guess I don't know if there was the right answer. There's not really an answer, but getting other points of view to challenge would be helpful to Mark. But any thoughts there about where you've seen where that has been a struggle, or how that may have been approached about alignment from product and legal regarding generative AI pilots?
Yeah, I'm in product. I experienced it firsthand. And the only way I was able to make any progress with legal was showing them the how, because I'm not using generative AI in a way that provides that exposes us in any way, shape, or form. And so when depending on your pilot, and I don't know what it is, but depending on your pilot, you can do that and machinate and say, well, wait a minute, I'm just using generative AI to write a SQL statement, or I'm just using generative AI to do a bots on docs on existing documentation. I'm not going outside of that. So Mark, I would highly advise that if that how really doesn't encroach on public information or expose public information, that you share the details. And I understand, I talk, at home and in life, and sometimes people don't hear me. Talk, and then document it. And so hopefully that will resonate. So I wish you the best on that one. I experienced that firsthand. Feel free to give me a shout, an email at any time. I'd be happy to walk you through my personal story there.
Yeah, and if any of our audience members just go on LinkedIn, look up Andy Bird on Concentric, reach out to him directly. Andy is always willing to share his knowledge and expertise with the community. So I appreciate any of the free consulting advice that you can help us out with through these continued times. We're out of time, and I wish we had more time. Andy, I'd love to have you come back. Maybe we do kind of a round two follow up and continue looking at next steps. But I do want to say thank you very much for the time you've taken to come visit with us, Andy. I want to say thank you for some of the presentation slides and everything you put together and in the conversation track here today. So on behalf of myself, thank you. For the rest of our audience members, I would ask you to join our KIA. This is our private online community. If you're a corporate listener today, it is the best way to stay plugged in with hundreds and hundreds of other community members of execs in the know and asking kind of the questions and details that we've had here today. Other than that, you'll continue to see more different talk tracks throughout 2024. Feel free to join. It really is a sharing community. And I want to wish everyone a safe and happy holiday season to you and your family. And finally, always make sure you're keeping customer number one. On that, thank you. This will conclude today's session, and everyone stay well.